And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And also, again, you can watch us live on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel. Coming up here in the next 2 hours, we will be talking about what happened in Week 2 of the high school football season. Look ahead to Week 3's action. Plus, our guests will be joined by Tomahawk head football coach Dewey Reilly at 6:30. I think it was probably one of the bigger wins Tomahawk has had in a while to have a program like Wittenberg-Burnham would come into town.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most surprising ones last Friday as we watched, or Thursday, watching the scores come through last weekend.
I saw a score early, said 13-0 Whitburn, so I thought, Whitburn's on their way, and then got home and saw, Tomahawk won it. So
Whitburn had a great win week 1,
yes,
so I kind of figured they had righted their ship and were good to go.
So we'll talk to Tomahawk football coach Dewey Reilly at 6:30. And then at 7:06, it's our student at the guest, Newman Catholic senior quarterback and defensive back Quincy Fender. Talk about his bounce back after just playing 2.5 quarters a year ago. Off to a really good start for a Newman team that's off to a good start, and they have a significant game coming up against Alman Bancroft Friday night as well. So those are our guests, and a lot to talk about. You heard the voice of Jason Foster, the former Wausau West High School head football coach. And let's jump right into last week's action. We'll start with the Wausau West Warriors. Again, a game that I had last Thursday right here on 98.9 WXCO. It was tight for much of the game, but in the end, Hudson wins 30-14 over the Warriors. Hudson now 2-0, West 1-1. Joe Gravine, 11-14, 131 yards, a touchdown and two picks for West. West could not get the rush game going last week. 42 yards on 28 attempts. Tegan Rasmus had an interception return for a touchdown. Cooper Adair, the multi-talented quarterback, both running and passing for Hudson, 116 yards through the air, 119 on the ground. Peyton Pingle, 17 rushes, 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. He only had 7 yards in the first half. He had most of his damage in the second half. But it was a game where the Warriors came out. They took the lead. It was a wonderful first drive. I mean, they took, 6.5 minutes, I think, off the clock. But the lead was for the kickoff. It's Peyton Pingle, the running back, was able to run it back. To come out like that on the road against a really good team, to score, have all that momentum. What's it like when you give it up that quickly?
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. A little bit. Superior can probably relate because that's pretty
true.
much what they did the week before, and then
that's
we
right.
had the play scored on the first play. It was eerily similar to the Everest game last year, where we had that really nice drive to start the game and had the backup quarterback in. But this drive, I mean, I thought maybe it was an omen because they were behind the sticks so much. Penalty. I mean, the big third down conversions, just one after another. Yeah. Seemed like they had figured something out early with the way they were moving the quarterback around and completing those passes on third and long. But at the end of the day, Hudson's just a little bit bigger, faster, and stronger. I think it was a struggle to get that rush game going for the Warriors. Watching Hudson play Eau Claire Memorial the week before, it seemed like Eau Claire Memorial was functional in their run game. They didn't have a lot more yards at the end of the game, but they seemed to set themselves up better on first down with those 3-4 yard runs, and we just couldn't ever get those 3, 4, 5, 6 yard runs that I think opens the playbook up a little bit and allows you to do some different things. So much of the night, Hudson was able to pin their ears back, and it was a tough night for Joe Gravine.
And I thought one of the differences between Memorial and Wausau West when it came to the run game is Memorial did not hurt themselves the same way the Warriors did with penalties. And I think that added, you talk about being behind the sticks.
Yep.
And that led to a lot of ears being pinned back, a lot of hard shots against Joe Gravine, who I thought stood in very well against great pressure. And he took some really tough shots in that game. But the penalties, I think, is something West will have to clean up starting this week.
Yeah, definitely. Those little things. One thing I heard from a couple of the players when I talked to them this week, and I guess I don't necessarily know, but they talked a lot about how loud it was at the game. Like, even that, these aren't excuses, or at least one that a head coach is going to listen to.
I didn't think they could hear the Hudson announcers down on the field.
That's a good point. But I think they said even in the huddle, it was hard to kind of hear what plays. So I think that's what it was. But either way, if that's the case, then you got to clean that up. So I'm sure that they spent a lot of time on that this week, figuring out how to be more efficient and fewer unforced errors.
It was not a good Thursday for the Wisconsin Valley Conference. I think it's fair to say And I think the game that was probably the one that kind of jumped out the most was at Steam Stadium, where River Falls, making an early stake at being a team to keep a very close eye on, went over there and sort of turned it around from last year, where Everest went over to River Falls, ran it down their throats in a big win. But this time it was River Falls just running it up and down the field, 54-21 over the Evergreens. For DC Everest, Jake Stasiak was 16 of 32 for 209 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Xavier Edwards continues to put up good early season numbers, 7 catches, 107 yards, and 2 scores. Corbin Enzenroth had 22 rushes for 74 yards and a score. But, boy, the offense for River Falls was good. Tino Massa, 20 of 25, 287 yards, 2 touchdowns. Joseph Tarasewicz had 25 rushes, 210 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the rushing and as a coach, especially a defensive coach, you look at those rushing numbers. 311 yards on the ground for River Falls, 108 for the Evergreens, 598 yards of total offense, 317 for DCE. River Falls, I mean, last season we saw them in the final game of the season over at Tom Field. It was a disappointing year, but you saw that team, and they had some skilled players and talent, and Tarasewicz was a kid that was on that team as well. It looks like they took maybe a message from last year, that disappointment. They've come out and it looks like they're out for bear.
Yeah, I was talking with Coach Johnson this week, and he kind of said that same thing. He feels like maybe they woke up the sleeping monster last year when they played him. But their coaches said that last year some of their best players were not their best leaders and lacked leadership and effort on the field and some of that mental toughness that you look for. So my bet is they spent a lot of time with that. And it's not like they came out of nowhere. They're an outstanding football program who probably was down last year. When you look at the stats or that yardage after the game, it's frustrating and disappointing if you're DC Everest. But I would bet it was a lot more frustrating and disappointing as it was actually happening to him. Because when a team runs the football like that, he averaged 8 yards carry. That's tough. And if you don't have an answer to that, that makes for a long, tough night.
Something you were talking to me off the air about was, when you have a special running back, sometimes you can get a little extra than maybe what everything else is. And I think for DC Everest right now, they're trying to find that special back. Not to say that either Enzenroth or anybody else on that Evergreen squad is not good. It's just they had some very special backs in recent years, and I think that's a factor, I think, for DCE early on.
Yeah, I think all of those pieces of that puzzle from last year, right? When those pieces all come together, you make a run to the state semifinals, and that's exactly what they did. But it's not just Blake Bankston at running back, but the quarterback and Edwards is back. And you look at that, but 32 attempts. Obviously they were kind of playing catch up for most of that game, a really good running back, and I can certainly attest to this as a head coach, makes you look a lot better as a head coach. It makes your offense look a lot better. Like we always say as coaches, after a game like this, whether it's the West game or the Everest game, it's ugly when it's happening, and certain things you wish you could change. But when you get to watch the film, there's things that you look at and you say, "All right, we're gonna clean that up, and that's gonna make a huge difference." And it never looks as bad on film as you think it did live. And on the flip side, it never looks as good on film as it did live when you have a big win either.
And one more thing about Everest is, they're not going to panic. They know that they faced really good teams in the first 2 weeks, and again, the first 2 weeks, while yes, they will have some relevance when it comes to the end of the year, hopefully for these teams making the playoffs. But at the same time, the season is not won or lost in the month of August.
No, and I think this is one of the beauties of these two conferences and these crossover games is it's a nice measuring stick week 1 and week 2 to see where you are at compared to those teams who you're probably going to get matched up with in your sectional when it comes to the end of the season. And this is pretty much carbon copy of what happened last year, with the exception of Everest not taking it to River Falls. But the teams on our side took their lumps week 1 and week 2. Spash is 2-0, but they got a struggling Superior team week 2. Had a good win week 1. But if you take this exact same thing that happened last year and you fast forward to the end of the season, the Wisconsin Valley schools really competed very well and even upset some of those big river schools who had beaten them earlier in the year down the stretch. So it definitely, if nothing else, hopefully a wake-up call and a sign of some better things to come for the Valley.
You don't give the trophies out in August. You give them out in late October, early November. Stevens Point, as you said, beat Superior 41-20. Trent Breitbach, 17-28, 246, 3 touchdowns, a couple of picks, throwing 68 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Johnny Ananitas had 6 catches for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Stevens Point did the job. I mean, we know that trip to Superior. It's not an easy trip. Did it the last 2 years. They went up there, and actually the Superior scored a couple of late touchdowns actually to make it a little tighter. But for Stevens Point, I think you hit it on the head. They may not have played the top teams, but they have to like where they are in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Being 2-0 is way better than being 1-1 or 0-2. And they've set themselves up, I think, in these games don't count, but if they do for end of the year stuff. But from a conference standpoint, these games are meaningless. But I think they've definitely established themselves as the front runner in the Valley Conference 2 weeks in. So obviously we'll start to learn a lot more this week. But yeah, after 2 weeks, Spash looks to be reloaded from 2 years ago.
Marshfield gave Menominee a good battle for at least a half. In the end, Menominee stayed perfect, 2-0, beat Marshfield 30-16. Marshfield led 16-14 at halftime, but then a couple of scores in the second half for Menominee helped them with the win. Hayden Carlson had a big night for Marshfield, 15 rushes, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Marshfield again played 2 quarterbacks, but neither one able to do much. 4 of 14 combined, 69 yards, but right now for the Marshfield Tigers, I think the good news is coming off a 49-25 loss against New Richmond, they were competitive with a pretty good Menominee team. But, boy, those passing numbers are pretty ugly.
Yeah, you know, the old saying is when you have 2 quarterbacks, you really have no quarterbacks, and that appears to maybe be the case. Right. And ultimately, just offensive efficiency. I don't know how they scored their 16 in the first half, but 16 for the game. I know Coach Gadel's offenses in the past have been much more high-powered than that, so kind of a little bit of a trend from where they were last year, struggling to score points, but it'll be interesting to see how they look in the conference.
Wisconsin Rapids and Rice Lake, and I have to say that Wisconsin Rapids did make strides from week 1. They were competitive for that pretty much the entire football game before losing, like Wausau Wested, to Hudson by the score of 30-14. It was just 14-8 at halftime. It was 22-14 after 3. Jack Larson for Rice Lake had 22 rushes, 148 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Rice Lake only had 290 yards of total offense. So for Wisconsin Rapids, again, you are in a building situation, as we've learned so far on this show, talking to the coach a couple of weeks ago. It is a case where they did make strides in week number 2.
Yeah, and I would say if you're a betting man, you would say Rice Lake is probably the better of the 2 opponents that Rapids has played so far. When you look at, we talk about making a big gain or jump from week 1 to week 2, they certainly did that. When you're in the situation they're in, coming off the season they had last year, new head coach, you're not necessarily talking about wins and losses overall, even in a week of going 1-0 or whatever. You're looking for those in-game wins, the stops, the holding them to 3 and outs, not going 3 and out, how many first downs you can get. And overall, it's kind of a X factor, but just that compete level. And looking at it on paper, it certainly looks like they made a big jump in their compete level from week 1 to week 2.
Not a good week for either Eau Claire school, as I'm sure they're happy to leave their Big Rivers brethren on the wayside here for the rest of the football season. But it was New Richmond defeating Eau Claire North 48-10. New Richmond, boy, a couple of big nights to start off their season with 49 and 48 points. And they had a freshman running back named Austin Whittick who had 223 yards on just 16 carries and 3 touchdowns. I wanted to ask you, because you've obviously coached for a very long time, to see a freshman at this level, the big school level, put up those kind of numbers, it kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah, pretty remarkable, actually. And that's a really good program. So they're not just throwing that guy out of there out of necessity. They're putting him there because he's the best running back they have to put out there. So I would, if I were a betting man, I would say he's probably a very mature freshman. I would say he's probably probably blessed with some physical skills.
Right.
But either way, I don't care how blessed you are to do that at 14, 15 years old is a heck of an accomplishment for a very good program, and probably very annoying for that conference for the next 3 years.
And Chippewa Falls beat Eau Claire Memorial by a score of 33-6, and likewise for Memorial. I do think, and again, watching them against Hudson, and first week can be sometimes a little misleading at times, but it still did look like a better football program. And I'm curious to see these Eau Claire schools, because coming in, I thought North may be a little bit better than Memorial, but Memorial, I think, again, watching them against Hudson shows some signs of life. But both sides, they need a win.
Yep, for sure. And I think when I look at what I've seen of those two teams on film at this point is that it does appear that on paper, Eau Claire North is probably the better football team when you look at the returning athletes that they have and how they've moved in different positions. Watching Eau Claire Memorial play in particular against Hudson, they look like they might be a little further ahead as far as execution goes, offensive and defensively.
Great Northern Conference, and Wausau East played a good Lacrosse Logan team. It was a game that went down to the wire, but in the end, Logan, with a late score, defeated East by a score of 29-21. Xander Klein, 164 yards passing. Henry Maas, 4 catches, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ian Stahl, 14 rushes, 94 yards. For Wausau East, you don't talk moral victories, but at the same time, they stepped up in competition from the Westby team they beat in week 1, and they seem to be lined up pretty well, I think, going into the conference campaign.
I would have to think so too. We'll talk a little bit about the Mosinee-Menasha game. I think based on week 1 that Mosinee probably, I would have to think, maybe the front runner right now, both being 1-1, all things being equal. But it's a good matchup for Wausau East. I give them credit for playing a team like Lacrosse Logan, who's probably a D2 school, and not only playing them this year, but having a much higher level of compete than they did the year before when they went down there on that stormy Thursday or Friday night. So
Merrill earned a comeback win, and they have to be a little nervous because they had lost badly last week. They went to halftime down 14 points last week, but then rallied past Crandon 30-20. Cole Rudy, 190 yards passing and a touchdown, plus 72 yards rushing and 2 scores. Keelan Allen is a very talented player. In fact, he had 6 catches for 153 yards and a touchdown, but I saw on Channel 12, their highlights, he made an incredible grab. Just a snag with one hand that was truly a highlight film catch. That'll be one of the best of the year. Very, very talented receiver for Merrill. Noah Klug, 16 tackles, 14 solo. Big night on the defensive side. And Cruz Palabicki of Crandon had a big night. 209 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, added an 82-yard touchdown reception. But for Merrill, I think going into the conference, they needed that one.
Oh, for sure, and it definitely sounds like maybe something clicked at halftime. I don't know what Coach Wadzinski may have said at halftime to get them going, but I think this is a little closer to maybe what we expected out of them this year, coming off a nice finish to last season.
Your old school, Northern Pines, put one on Antigo last week and apparently got the Red Robins angry because they defeated Sturgeon Bay 54-6, so that's a big win for Antigo. And you touched on Mosinee, and it shows how quickly things turn around. Nobody felt as good as Mosinee probably last week when they beat Stratford to end their long win streak. But they went to a Division II team, I think, Menasha, right? Are they 2 or 3?
2 or 3, yeah.
But they're those teams in the eastern part of the state, even the ones you don't hear about all the time, are so good. And Menasha really took it to Mosinee 41-21. Treve Stoffel, 14-22, 128 yards, a touchdown, 12 rushes, 48 yards, and a touchdown, 7.5 tackles. But, boy, they could not do it as a team rushing the football. Just 30 yards on 24 attempts for the Mosinee Indians. And lessons learned. I mean, again, when you challenge yourself in the non-conference games, that's the thing you want. I mean, yes, you want that win, but, boy, you learn a lot about your team when you go on a trip to a place like Menasha.
For sure. And again, I don't think we can stress enough that Menasha is a really good football program. I mean, state appearances, state championships, several in the last 15 years. So, honestly, when you talk about them, you're probably talking about a similar caliber team, not as recently dominant as you are when you talk Stratford. And they had I think if you talked with Coach Stoffel like we did last week and asked him now, would he want to be 2-0? Of course he would. But if you'd have asked him in the middle of July, if after 2 weeks of Stratford and Menasha you were 1-1, I think he would say that they feel like they're heading in the right direction.
Tomahawk rallied past Wittenberg-Burnhamwood in overtime, 28-22. Tomahawk 2-0, Whitburn 1-1, Max Larson 21 rushes, 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not a lot of yardage generally. A 207-202 edge for the Chargers. Bo Davis, the replacement quarterback for Whitburn, was 8 of 15, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. It sounded like an old-fashioned Friday night slugfest. Actually, the 28-22 score not really indicative of what it looks like the defenses were able to accomplish.
Yeah, and obviously we talk a lot on this show about Wittenberg-Burnhamwood and where they've been in the recent years and kind of where their big injury this year, but had a really nice showing in week 1. So like you had said earlier, that Tomahawk to be 2-0, obviously, Crandon wasn't a world beater week 1, but this is a great win for them heading into the conference and looking at where these other teams are at this point and the struggles that they've had or maybe aren't where they were hoping to be. I think Tomahawk can walk into this conference season feeling pretty good. And
the other games, I'm going to go through them rather quickly. Rhinelander beat Hayward 34-22. Lakeland now 2-0. They shut down Ashland 14-0. And Medford, again, struggles against another good team, falling to Onalaska 36-0. So, obviously for Lakeland, a good start. For Medford, not such a good start. And Rhinelander gets back on the winning track.
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting as we get into conference now to see where does Medford actually fit in, right? Like maybe they're probably not the favorite anymore, but how far have they slid down with their young team?
Let's go into the CWC for a few minutes before we have our first guest. Quite a game in Marathon last week. Auburndale 14, Marathon 12. Nathan Van Wy of Auburndale, 121 yards and a touchdown. True Thurs, 10 of 16, 117, 2 interceptions. Garrett Bracewell, 7 catches, 98 yards. Marathon had a edge in the yardage, 259 to 199, but a late field goal that was blocked. The Marathon had a chance to win it, but could not get it through. But Auburndale continues to impress. But Marathon, as we've talked about, I think is a team that's better than they were the last couple of years.
Definitely. I think the change in scenery, right? New coach. Obviously, Truthers being healthy helps that team a lot. But as you look at the consistent names now, we've talked about Garrett Bracewell a lot last year, that what Truthers being the kind of the dual threat at quarterback and have a great receiver like that. Having the advantage in yards and giving yourself an opportunity to win at the end of the game, it's kind of where you want to be as a coach.
Edgar beat Stratford 14-0. It could be 2025, but when those teams get together, we're back to 1975.
Exactly.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be defensive. Maverick Butt had 18 rushes, 126 yards and a touchdown. Graham Strite, 2 catches, 80 yards for Edgar. Colton Hopp, 10 rushes, 50 yards. Just 14 yards on 3 completions for the Stratford pass game. Just 167 yards allowed by the Edgar defense. That's a big win on the road, no less, for Edgar.
Yeah, that is the stuff that. What is Jerry at 400 or 600 and whatever wins? That's the stuff those wins are made of right there. I mean, a lot of talk about state championships. When you talk high school football, you always think high-powered offenses and all those things. But what makes Edgar so outstanding is their defense over the course of time. And this was an outstanding defensive effort by them. And they just obviously Stratford is no slouch. They graduated after 3 years of absolute dominance, turned a lot of guys over, new coach. So I think this might have been somewhat the direction people might have thought this game would go. But I think it definitely speaks to where Edgar's at and the tough road that anybody who gets in their way is going to have moving forward. As they move into conference, I would imagine there's not a lot of teams very excited about that matchup.
Abbotsford beat Colby 27-14. I was a little surprised based on what Colby did in week 1 and what happened to Abbotsford in week 1. But Abbotsford got that run game going again with 333 yards on 32 attempts, 220 yards and 3 touchdowns on just 12 attempts for Chase Boulder. So Abbotsford did it the way they did it, but boy, that's a big win after what happened the week before in what I thought was a surprising home loss against Loyal Greenwood.
Absolutely, and you just wonder what maybe happened in that game as far as numbers match up, who eligibility, that sort of thing. But it was I was pleased to see this score on Friday night when I watched it, because it appears as though Abbotsford is heading back in the direction where they've been the last few years, being able to run run the ball really well and have success doing it.
Wyowega Fremont, again, a program that's been on the uptick the last couple of years. A nice win at Iola Scandinavia, 36-14 to go to 2-0 on the season. They had 269 yards on 33 rushes as a team, really spread out. Leader was Dawson Lind with 88, and they held the Iola Scandinavia rush game to only 42 yards on 29 attempts. But Wyowega Fremont kind of hangs around in that very tough conference, and they've done some good things.
And they probably looked at the scores Friday night and saw Wittenberg-Burnhamwood taking the loss, and because that's where they are as a program. They're looking to take that next step and either knock off Wittenberg-Burnhamwood or Amherst. So maybe that door cracked open a little bit.
A big win for Spencer Columbus, 49-34 over Pittsville. And Jack Haper set a state record. This is a record, 441 yards on 33 rushes, 7 touchdowns for Spencer Columbus. Dawson Luther, 12 of 22, 156, a touchdown, 15 rushes for 98 yards and a touchdown as well for Pittsville. But Haper and 441, a record.
Unbelievable.
That's a season's worth there.
Well, I was going to say, it's a season's worth, and I think about some of the outstanding running backs I've had on teams I've had and gone up against, probably more so gone up against, and to think that there's a record like that that's still getting broken on an average Friday night is pretty remarkable.
Loyal Greenwood, he said, maybe this is a team that's much better than they were a year ago because they had that win over Abbotsford on the road last week, and they dominated Neillsville Granton, who had won last week, winning 50-0, and Amherst 35-8 over Winnebago Lutheran. I can't say I know a lot about Winnebago Lutheran, but it does look like with the first 2 games, Amherst is off to a very solid start. It looks like, and again, in this conference, could definitely be in the mix near the top.
Yeah, it was kind of remiss earlier when I talked about Wittenberg-Burnhamwood losing, but this conference, seeing Stratford coming in at 0-2 is probably interesting, in particular for a team like Amherst.
And then finally, the Merrillwood CWC. Most of the teams were in those crossovers with the CWC large, but Pacelli lost to Parkview Albany 32-6 to drop the 1-1 on the season. Bryce Flaker, 14 rushes, 56 yards. Jake Williams also 56 yards on the ground for Pacelli. And Assumption lost to Pepin Alma 36-0. Royals are now 0-2. Wiley Cornwell, 14 carries, 78 yards as well for the Royals. We'll talk about what happened in 8-player football and look ahead to week number 3 a little bit later in the show. But coming up in our next couple of segments, it will be our guest for this week. Near the top of the hour, there'll be Quincy Fender, our student-athlete guest, the Newman Catholic senior. And coming up in 1 minute, we'll talk to Tomahawk head football coach Dewey Reilly after that massive win for his Hatchets over the Wittenberg-Burnhamwood Chargers in overtime last week. That's coming up next here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, it's the home opener for the Wausau West High School football team. The Warriors will play host to Eau Claire North at Tom Field. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Coverage begins with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Wausau West football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Sun Printing, the Wausau West Athletic Department, Wisconsin Valley Flag Football, Featherstone Cabinetry, the Wausau West Gridiron Club. It's Wausau West playing host to Eau Claire North in high school football. Friday night, starting with the pregame show at 6:35, opening kickoff at 7 on your home for Wausau West sports. 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices by searching WXCO, the Civic Media app, and of course, again on YouTube, youtube.com, and on the 98.9 WXCO channel. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and very happy to welcome in our coach guest for this week from Tomahawk High School, head coach Dewey Reilly. And Coach, first of all, thanks for spending a few minutes with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, we were talking earlier that for Tomahawk football, this has got to be one of the more significant wins against a program that's been so successful in recent years, of a large school from the CWC in Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. To come from behind last week as well had to be a special Friday night over at your field.
Absolutely. Wittenberg, obviously, a very solid program. Nothing but respect for them and their coaching staff and their program. For us to come out on top, especially in an overtime win with the way that the game started, was huge for us.
Coach, as you guys opened with Crandon week 1, had a nice win, good way to start the season. Knowing that you were going from Crandon to Wittenberg and Birnhamwood, what was practice like last week leading into that game and getting the boys ready to play a bigger opponent like that?
It's always just, kind of trying to take it one week at a time. Crandon is unique in that Crandon, they do what they do.
Yep.
They line up, basically 0 splits, and they're going to run the football. And so for us, it's a little bit of a one-off of a defense that week. And so then you get into Wittenberg, which is, dynamic in what they do. Very well coached. They've got decent size. They've got, team speed, and have historically, always been solid.
Yep.
Especially in our Division 5. And so for us, it was just kind of trying to break down what they do. We obviously had to make some adjustments early on. And, fortunately, we were comfortable in what we had as a foundation defensively, and we're able to, come out with a victory.
Let's talk about the defense, because one of the numbers that stood out was the fact that your team held Wittenberg-Birnhamwood just barely 200 yards. What was the key on the defensive side for your team to slow down the Chargers?
So, they're dynamic, right? They have good athletes. They were obviously missing one of their better players who was out with a knee injury, but they are able to move the ball in multiple ways. They can bang the ball inside. They can get out to the edge. They can throw the ball. And so for us, it was, not trying to beat, every single formation that they show up in. It's trying to find out what they do on a consistent basis and then try to take that away from them. One of the things that, I heard you guys talking about earlier is, defensive football. And I think sometimes that gets forgotten in today's day and age of, kind of run and gun offenses and watching games on Sunday, that in high school, you have to be able to shut down the run. And for us, that is priority number one. And then for us, it's just a mentality and kind of a tone that we have on defense that we want to be fast, we want to be physical, we want to be aggressive at the point of contact, and then let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, it is a great job on defense last week too with that. When you look at a win like this against an opponent like that, it's got to be a nice bump going into conference play this week, being the smallest school in the GNC, knowing that you can compete with programs like this. I know last year you guys did some nice things and kind of coming back into the GNC as the smallest school. I think people had some question marks and to kind of see what type of football you guys were going to play. And I think you answered some questions last year and had some good wins and some close games. How does this kind of take you into that next step? Obviously, you got to play the games, and there's a lot of them ahead of you, but how does this help knowing that you just beat a team like Wittenberg-Birnhamwood as you go face teams like Wausau East, Mosinee, Medford?
I think the biggest help is internally, with our own program and our own kids that, we start to believe. And we're telling these kids that, yes, we're a small school, but we have talented kids. We have kids that have done a lot in the off season. And so we may not always, on paper look as big as some of these other teams. But at the end of the day, like you said, you still have to play the game. And win, lose, or draw, teams come away knowing that they played a tough Tomahawk team. And for us, it's always having that little bit of a chip on our shoulder, knowing that we have to be above and beyond fast. We have to be above and beyond physical. And to come out finally, after all the overtime games that we've had in the last several years, to come out on top against a quality program, I think is affirmation, not just for the kids, but for our staff, our community, everything else, that when we line up, we're going to give you a game. And I think that the kids are, especially after last year and this big win on Friday, are truly buying into that.
Again, we're talking to Dewey Reilly, the head football coach at Tomahawk High School here on 98.9 WXCO and the Big High School Sports Show. Continuing along the line on that mentality to fall behind early, 13 points to a team like Wittenberg-Birnhamwood. That had to show you and your coaches something early in the season, didn't it?
Absolutely. It's kind of one of our mantras is just, being resilient. We talk about, athletics being an extension of the educational process, and that, life throws you curveballs. And we got down first play of the game. They housed us on a bubble pass. And in years past, that may have been the nail in our coffin early. These kids have been consistently showing and buying into the fact of, be resilient, bend but don't break. There's a lot of game left. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm proud of with this group is that, we were not pointing fingers on the sidelines. Nobody got down. Even when they scored the second time, we just basically stuck with our business, stuck with our scheme, made little adjustments, and then slowly started to grind away on them.
Love it. Knowing that you guys are the smallest school, not to keep beating on that, but knowing the success you've had in hockey as well. Like, is there a lot of these kids who play both? I mean, does that help too, that these kids are working together, playing together, kind of have a similar mindset in both sports, the physicality, the compete level? Do you see that being a benefit for you guys?
I do. I think it's the fact that I've had most of these kids for most of their athletic careers in multiple sports. And, I think that attitude kind of reflects leadership and the fact that, we are a small school. I also graduated from the school. We were small back then. The school size to me, it doesn't matter. It's the heart in the kids. It's the mentality that you go about your business. It's the fact that, like you said, you have to play the games. And so when I look at what we did in hockey, we ran a really tough schedule. We weren't scheduling, teams that we knew we could beat. We were trying to punch way above our weight class. Trying to do that also in football. When I took over, we had the option of scheduling, non-conference games. I asked for us to change some games up and get us the toughest opponents we could find, Wittenberg being one of them. They've historically, been good. They still are good. And so for us, it's an iron sharpens iron type of mentality. We know that we're going to have to show up week in and week out, especially in our conference. And for us, it's always, if you underestimate us, that's good for us.
We talked a bit about the defense. What about the offense? What's been working? Who are some of the kids that have been key components to what you've been able to accomplish in the first couple of weeks?
I think it always starts with football. It always starts with the line. And so, we are not overly deep at our line position. And so, especially coming into this year after graduating a couple kids, we had to convert some guys that don't typically look like offensive linemen. But me knowing them personally, who they are and, their strengths, going to those kids and saying, hey, this is what we need you to do this year. And to the man, it was, yes, coach, I'll do whatever you need me to do, which as a coach, how could you not love that? And so those guys up front have been obviously productive when you look at how we've been rushing the ball. We've kind of been running the ball by committee with whoever's got kind of the hot hand that night has been getting more touches, which is, I think, what most coaches would do. So when you look at, the Max Larsons, the Rex Reillys, the Tegan Saracens running the ball, we're no longer a one-trick pony when it comes to that. And then converting Cash Olson from kind of a wide receiver running back to a quarterback and started him as a true freshman, getting that year under his belt, watching him grow and develop as an athlete and as a quarterback has been awesome. And it also gives us that kind of second facet of the game, and we are able to throw the ball.
Coach, based on the things you just said, what I'm hearing a lot is there's a lot of selflessness on your team, guys willing to change positions, obviously going from skilled positions to linemen, guys sharing carries in the running back room and doing that. Tell me about what you guys, kind of the other stuff, not necessarily the X and O's. What are some of the things your program does to prepare these kids for those types of things, to be good leaders, to be selfless, to be great teammates?
We use the phrase, what we do in the dark shines in the light. I know it's cliche and probably a lot of guys use it, but it is true. What we do away from Friday nights, I think is a reflection of the type of kids that we have. These kids work really hard. It has been a culture change that we've had where, instead of having, the 3 or 4 guys showing up over the summer and working hard, we average, for a team of 43 kids, we average, between 20 and 30 kids showing up on days that are not mandatory. And when you see those guys, bonding over the summer, bonding over other sports, they're in the weight room together, they're pushing each other. That's when you really start to see changes in high school athletics where they have commitment, they have buy-in. And like you said, when they're playing as much for themselves as they are for each other, you get something special. And, in my third year here, this is, I've had good locker rooms. This one is kind of special in that we have some great senior leadership. We've got some younger guys who know what the expectations of mine are. They now know what the expectations of those senior leaders are. And it's trickling down into our program. And obviously, our performance is reflecting that.
Let's talk about your conference. Great Northern is always such a very competitive conference, and in the first 2 weeks of non-conference activity, pretty much everybody's done something well. Yourself and Lakeland started with a couple of wins, but a number of the other teams found victories in at least one of their games. And then there's the dominant force for a while, the Medford Raiders, who are, I think, trying to rebuild after losing incredible talent and playing a couple of really tough non-conference games. After 2 weeks, it looks like a very interesting conference. So what's your take on the GNC this year?
I think that, in the years that I've been here, the GNC seems a little bit more balanced. Last year, we were competitive, I thought, in every single game besides Medford. Medford had a special team last year with a special running back. And so I think that, as guys graduate, as things start to balance out, I think that the GNC is obviously very competitive. I think that there is a bit more balance this year as far as I think everybody's going to have to show up and not take anybody for granted. There's a lot of good teams. There's a lot of good coaches. And so for us, it's going to be, not necessarily looking at the season as a whole. It's going to be taking each game and trying to go 1-0 each week.
Yeah, talking about those teams, you guys have Wausau East coming up this week. What do you guys, the smallest school in the conference, play in the biggest school in the conference? I know enrollments don't matter, but what are you seeing from Wausau East? What are the couple things you guys are really focusing on this week without giving away too much?
I've had these interviews in hockey too, and it's just kind of my philosophy in that, we have to take care of our own backyard first. And so when I look at East, you can tell that they have some explosive players. They're pretty solid up front on both sides of the ball, and that does come with numbers, right?
Yep.
Football is a numbers game, and so when you do have a higher enrollment, you tend to have more kids out. You tend to have more kids to choose from, and the gamut of sizes. And so I think that's an advantage for Wausau East. For us, it's always about us taking care of our own business first, and so we have to be fundamentally sound. We have to be solid in our schematics and what we're planning on doing, and then we have to execute. And so being the smaller school, it'll be like that from here on out, right? It's been like that against everybody except for, Wittenberg and Crandon.
Yep.
And so we enter the GNC being the numbers underdog. But again, I think it comes down to us just being able to execute, trusting what we put together throughout the week, and then letting the chips fall where they may.
You talked about culture earlier, and I'm going to kind of expand it to your school. How has the success of a wonderful winter, there's nothing like going and getting a gold trophy and to bring, I think, a school community together, and now to have, your football program on the right track and getting some really nice results. Have you sensed a change in maybe the school spirit? Has there been something added to the whole experience at Tomahawk High School with some of that, I would call it culture change, and some of the success that's been able to come behind that?
Absolutely. I think that, like a lot of communities, our community kind of revolves around our school and our school athletics. People are into it. And so, anybody who tells you that, winning doesn't matter is probably downplaying the competitive spirit in most people. And so anytime that you can put together success, people want to be a part of it, and they want a role in it. And so that's a big thing for us, especially on, my teams and the players in the community, is that, there's a role for everybody. It may be big, it may be small, but you're part of it. And I think that the biggest thing that I've seen is, community spirit goes up, community support goes up, which is awesome. I love it. But the biggest thing that I've seen is within our athletes, when you're being successful, they tend to listen to you a little bit more and have those aha moments, stressing that you have to be doing more. You have to be working out. You have to, try to be a multi-sport athlete, especially in a town like Tomahawk, where we don't have the number of kids that other teams in our conference do. And so when I look at how our kids have bought into the off-season workouts, how I look into, they've kind of bought into the we before me mentality as far as, you may get there faster by yourself, but you're going to get farther as a team. Those are all things that have been, slowly building. And then they get reaffirmed when you start winning. You start beating teams that people don't give you, maybe a chance to beat. And then especially when you can take home some hardware like we did in hockey, it's huge. And it just really gets the community behind you.
One of the questions we often ask our student-athlete guests is about the multi-sport athletes, is how they handle the time and to be able to be successful in all their sports and to be able to be successful in all their aspects of life. You coach two very, I would call them significant sports in terms of time and in order to do it well. What's your secret in order to be able to do what you've been able to accomplish as the coach for the Tomahawk hockey team and now with the Tomahawk football team? You don't see that very often with those two sports. I'm just curious about how you've been able to handle it and to be able to do it so very well.
I like to think I've got a good support system. I got a great staff when it comes to both football and hockey. My family and my wife in particular, I have to be very understanding, which is an understatement. And then, people who know me know that I'm a foot on the gas kind of guy, and I have extremely high expectations of not just myself, but programs that I'm involved with and people around me. And I think that once people understand that and they see what I'm trying to do, they buy into it. And so when I multitask between football, hockey, and then being a dentist, it's a lot, but you kind of get in the groove. And I'm very, very fortunate to have the support of my athletic director and Ryan Flynn and my superintendent in Wendell Quisenberry, where when I took over and kind of gave them my game plan of what I thought we were capable of doing, and this is the direction that I want to go, they've been extremely supportive, and I wouldn't be able to do it without, like I said, that network and that support behind us.
Coach Foster, anything you would like to ask before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to comment and say I love a lot of the things you said that you guys are doing, in particular when you talked about how athletics are an extension of the classroom. And I think what a great opportunity the student athletes at Tomahawk have to have a guy like you coaching two of those major sports, and then also encouraging those kids to be multiple sport athletes and doing that. So congratulations on a phenomenal start to the season. I can't wait to see how you guys roll through the Great Northern this year.
Me too, and thank you.
You bet.
And thank you, Coach Reilly. Dewey Reilly, head coach of the Tomahawk Hatchets. Again, 2-0 start, and of course, still in the glow of a incredible hockey season that brought a state championship to Tomahawk last year. And again, thanks, Coach, and we'll talk again sometime soon, I hope.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to take a 1-minute break and then come back and talk about what happened in 8-player football last week. And then following the top of the hour news, we'll be talking to a Quincy Fender, our student-athlete guest from Newman Catholic. So that's all coming up here on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, it's a Central Wisconsin 8-player football showdown as the Newman Catholic Cardinals travel to Elman Bancroft to take on the Eagles. Hear all the exciting action live on the Sports 2 stream of WXCO.FM and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. The game will also air on a tape delay basis after the Wausau West game on 98.9 WXCO. Newman Catholic High School football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Sun Printing, the Newman Catholic Athletic Booster Club, and Wisconsin Valley Flag Football. It's Newman Catholic at Elman Bancroft in 8-player football. Friday night, starting with pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7, live on the Sports 2 stream of WXCO.FM and on the Civic Media app, and also on tape delay following the Wausau West game on 98.9 WXCO. And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. I don't know how you do it. How do you coach both hockey and football, and not only that, but to be so successful? I mean, it's been, he's obviously a guy that doesn't believe that numbers are a detriment. It's about the process and getting the best out of your teams.
And they obviously have, great start to the season. They obviously have a ways to go to get to the comparison I'm about to make, but is Tomahawk potentially the Rice Lake of the Great Northern Conference? I mean, you look at what Rice Lake does in the big rivers. Their enrollment is significantly smaller. They have an identity. They play tough football. They run the ball very well, and they play great defense. So, if Tomahawk's able to do this consistently, there's a recipe for success out there.
Let's talk about what happened in 8-player last week. CW 8, Newman Catholic defeated Wild Rose 50-8, the game that we had right here on 98.9 WXCO. Our student-athlete guest coming up, Quincy Fender, was 12 of 15, 177 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, 10 rushes, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and balanced with his receivers. 4 catches each for Cooper Gould, Griffin Pent, and Michael Fox. And Newman D finally gave up its first down of the season in the fourth quarter. It's been a very impressive start for the Cards.
Looking forward to talking to Quincy about that first down they gave up.
It was just barely. Marion Tigerton upset Alman Bancroft 31-18, but maybe, who knows, when all this is said and done, won't be an upset, but big win for Marion Tigerton over the Alman Bancroft squad that Newman faces this week. Also in that league, Port Edwards fell to Tri-County, who's been off to a really good start. Looks like they may be a contender in that league, 58-14. Wabeno Leona put the it was not a good night for Menominee Nation. 74-0. Menominee did receive a forfeit against Boulder Gresham, so I guess they got something out of it. So it really doesn't, I guess, count as a loss. Athens, I think, only won 1 game last year. They're off to a very quick start, and they beat an always tough Thorpe squad 54-12. So Athens looks like a team that could be working their way up in the 8-player game. You have Prentice defeating South Shore 44-7, and Shawamigan, Butternut, Mercer. When you have 3 schools, you should be successful. 50-0 over Winter Birchwood. And then in the North Central 8, McDonald, 66-0 over Clayton. Gilman, 49-0 over Rib Lake. And Owen Withy bounces back from their week 1 loss to Gilman, defeating Prairie Farm 46-16. This is going to be interesting this year in 8-player because the last number of years, it was 16 teams in the playoffs. So you're thinking as you go through the season what you need to do to get to the playoffs.
Right.
It completely changes this year with 32 teams.
Yeah, and it appears as though I felt like maybe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, probably am, but I felt like last year we didn't see some of these bigger numbers that we're seeing right now as far as scores and lopsided scores. So as we move forward and these teams start playing each other, I'm going to be interested to see if these big offenses hold up.
No, you're exactly right. And boy, I just as a person that loves high school sports and loves high school football, there's a little pain when you see those kind of scores, isn't there?
Yeah, those are
because
tough.
you feel for the kids. I feel for any kid that goes through a situation like that.
Yep, and you don't know, like when you look at the different teams, and we've talked about this over the years of how you get to 8-man football, right? Whether it's your overall enrollment at your school is down, whether it's your enrollment and participation numbers are down, whatever the case may be. But 8-man has offered a lot of teams opportunities who probably wouldn't ordinarily have them. So however they got to having that team and that program, when you see them getting beat 74-0, even though you got the forfeit win, but the 44-7, 66-0, 49-0. Those are tough games to prepare for. Those are tough games to play, and they're tough games to pull a lot out of from a how do you get better for next week type of thing.
How as a coach, because you've not too many, but we've had a couple where it's like, when you have to hit the play button. How hard is that?
Well, yeah, exactly. And then you start dealing with the kids who work really hard all off season to want to play, and you don't want them in the game anymore for injury or to run things up. So those are all challenging situations on both sides of the ball.
News update at the top of the hour, and then Quincy Fender, our student athlete guest, coming up here on the Big High School Sports Show. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And again, you can also get the show each week on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and on the 98.9 WXCO channel on YouTube to be able to watch the show as you listen to it as well. With former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster, I am Chad Holmes, and time now for our student athlete guest for this week, and from Newman Catholic High School senior. It seems like you've been around there for a long time, but finally a senior, Quincy Fender, member of the football team, member of the boys basketball team, and member of the baseball team as well. And Quincy, glad to have you back.
Glad to be back.
We had you on during basketball season last year, so this time around you don't have a relative on the other side of the table, so it would be a little bit more difficult. But something I'd asked you in the post game on Friday night after your win against Wild Rose, sometimes after a while you almost forget, but last year you were moved to quarterback during the off season. You went through the summertime playing quarterback, and then you came out and had a wonderful first 2.5 quarters in the season opener against Phillips, right? It was Phillips. And then you had a significant injury. You were out for the rest of the year, then returned during the basketball year. What's it been like now to have a little bit more time at the quarterback position? Because that's not an easy transition to move from receiver to quarterback. How much more comfortable do you feel now after going through the offseason, going through practices, scrimmage, and now a couple of games than you were even after that great start last season?
Yeah, I'm a lot more confident just with the little things. Obviously, throwing motion, coach helped me with a lot. All the footwork, all the plays, that's what I really needed to work on, being confident in the huddle. So all the time that I've had at practice with coach, with my teammates, it's helped me get to the confidence I have now.
There was a new WIA rule this offseason that kind of gave unlimited contact. Did Coach Micklig take advantage of that? Did you guys do a little bit more in the summer than maybe you would have done in years past?
I mean, we went outside for routes a lot more. We kind of did that in the past. We didn't have any practices, anything like that. But we did still have our football camp, and we did a little bit more at that with the contact, obviously, so we could do a lot more at those camps. So we did that the week and the end of summer.
Talking to Coach between week one, your 33-0 win over Florence, and then week two, the 50-8 win against Wild Rose, he, I think, felt a lot better about the offensive performance, that he took major strides forward. How did you look at the difference for your offense between week one and week two?
Yeah, I think Florence, we just didn't execute as well as we could have. And obviously that's the plays, those are on me. All the little things, I think we could have done a better job. And going into week two against Wild Rose, I think we put most of it together. There's still going to be work to do, but we looked a lot better than we did week one.
We talked about it a little bit before we went on the air. Talk a little bit about the atmosphere and the environment. Obviously, it wasn't a close game. You guys took care of business and had a great night. But brand new facilities, first home game, first time under the lights. What was that like?
It was super cool for all of us. We were super grateful for the opportunity, and obviously the lights flickering with the touchdown, the lights on in general. When it got dark and the sunset over the hill, it was the best game I think I've ever played.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful facilities over there. You guys are very fortunate.
How important is Friday night lights to a high school athlete?
It's the energy is there's a lot more energy than on Saturdays. We can put it that way. So,
talk about your the other side of the football. You're not just on the offensive side; you're on the defensive side. Before we talk specifically about what you do on defense, I imagine for somebody that loves to compete, and we're going to talk about the fact that you're so involved in so many different sports, the opportunities that you get being a two-way player, being able to do so much. I imagine it's just fantastic to have the opportunities that you do have at Newman.
Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Obviously, we have 8 players that start on offense and play on defense. So the 8 starters go back and forth, and I take every opportunity I can, whether it's on offense or defense. I'm just grateful that I can be out there playing.
What's your strength on the defensive side of the football? What do you think you do best?
Pass coverage for sure. Tackling. I've never wanted to hit crazy. I've never been a crazy hitter, but I mean, coach usually puts me on their best receiver each week, so I have fun guarding them.
I think that's great, too, that knowing you had an injury last year, it would have been really easy to say you're just going to play quarterback this year and try to protect your safety. So I love that Coach Micklig turns you loose and lets you go out there and compete and get all those reps in. You talked about the 8 guys who kind of start on one side and go both ways. Who are the key players for the Newman Catholic Cardinals this year?
Our line, I was going into the season a little skeptical. 3 players who've never played on the offensive line before. We've had a skill position go to center, and then obviously the 3 Pence, Griff, Damon, Everett. Griff's at receiver. But our line has been phenomenal to start the year, and that's a credit to them. And our skill positions, it's just our chemistry with Cooper at receiver, Michael at tight end, Griff at receiver, Tristan in the backfield. Our chemistry with the 6 seniors especially, it's helped us get to the point where we're at.
What does it mean to have guys that are willing to go to the line? And because, I have my sheets here, all these numbers here, they're not linemen's numbers. I mean, I could easily, it would be nice to be able to say, hey, so-and-so had 50 snaps and was able to keep their defender out 50 times, but we don't have that. For a team, and you talk about chemistry and talk about, I think, culture, what does it mean to have guys that are more, not just saying, well, I'll do it if I have to do it, but actually grab a hold of that opportunity and become really good at the lineman position? What does that mean for the development of a team coming together at the start of a season?
Well, it's all credit to the line. I mean, we wouldn't get any yards if it weren't for them. They go to work super hard in practice with Coach Grundy. Every day, they're working really hard, come to the play. If they make a mistake, they're right away to fix it. They ask questions, they're learning their spots, and that's what ultimately gives us the winning touchdowns, yards, whatever we need to do. It starts with those 3 guys.
Let me jump in real fast. You mentioned Coach Grundy, and this year, and Newman's always been, I think, blessed with really good coaches, up and down from Coach Micklig and his staff. But boy, to have Coach Grundy join in, have Coach Gress join in, have Coach Thorpe, who's been at Coach Micklig's side for so many years. I mean, you're overflowing with incredible coaching talent. What's the importance of having not just a great head coach, but having in small groups have a coach that's able to come out there and continue to help you guys improve in every aspect of your games? I mean, it feels like you got a really good group that you're working with here this year.
Yeah, the confidence is high with each person. So in the small groups, we're not worried about a certain group not getting as many reps. All of us are getting good reps, great reps, doing the things we need to do. And then when we put it all together in large group, that helps us with all those coaches.
And I had the opportunity to coach with Coach Grundy for 4 years at Wausau West, which was awesome. Coach is great. Having Coach Micklig, who's as good as it gets in 8-man football, a guy like Coach Grundy, all the people that Chad just mentioned, they each do it differently, too. Coach Micklig and Coach Grundy are 2 very different guys with tons of knowledge and experience. Knowing that how important that is for you guys as a team to learn from different guys and different styles and what you take from each one. When you mentioned those 8 guys before and other guys who kind of take the leadership role on this team, do you guys kind of feel a sense of responsibility for taking what you've learned over the course of 4 years and kind of passing that down as well? Like, do you guys kind of play that role with the younger guys or some of the guys who are more new to football than you?
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do. And at Newman, we have about 20 kids on the roster, so that gives us the opportunity to get closer with those little kids. They can ask us questions. We're always being there to help them rather than a school maybe with 100 kids on their football team where it's harder to reach out. We have a great opportunity to take leadership, and all of the people that are out there do a great job of it.
Again, we're talking to Quincy Fender, senior at Newman Catholic High School, here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. I want to turn a little bit to your other sports. Start with basketball, because I thought the way that you were able to come back last year after a very significant injury, missed, I think, maybe only 3 games, if I'm not mistaken, at the start of the year, and then came back and averaged 19 points per game. I imagine that, again, knock on wood, that going into your senior year, to be able to come in healthy, hopefully. I should never assume anything, but at the same time, right now you're obviously looking very good. I imagine there's a lot of excitement going into the winter as well. You got a lot of work to do here in the fall, but with Coach Gress now back at the helm for the boys basketball program and some experience back for your group, it was not an easy year last year in terms of wins and losses, but there has to be a lot of excitement going into the winter as well.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to jump to anything.
I
but
know.
But we're pretty excited for the Windsor. We didn't lose a single senior towards the end of the season there. And summer, we joined a different summer league, only lost 1 or 2 games in there. And Coach Gress coming back, that's super helpful for us. Our open gyms in the summer, we got some alumni in, and we got a lot better over the summer. So we're all excited, especially the seniors coming in. We're excited to see if we can change the winning streak. What happened last year, see if we can fix that going into this year.
You talked about Coach Gress, and Chad mentioned that Coach Gress is helping coach football this year. And unless I'm mistaken, I think I had heard that Coach Micklig might be helping out coaching some basketball as well. So how cool is that to kind of have those coaches kind of going into those other sports and carrying over and being able to bring their expertise from their number 1 sport into the number 2 sport?
Yeah, it's super helpful. Obviously, Coach Micklig and Coach Gress are really close, which helps us, and they're doing an incredible job in both basketball and football. That helps us build a relationship with them, with each other. So it's a great opportunity that we have so they can coach us in basketball and football.
What's your favorite sport?
I'd have to say in season, so
Good
don't want to
answer.
make Coach Micklig or Coach Gress mad, but whatever's in season, we'll go with that.
Neither one of those guys ever listens to this show, so because they get enough of me elsewhere. But let's step away from sports again for a little bit. When you're not involved in sports, when you're not studying, when you're not hanging out with friends, what do you like to do? Well, I guess hang out with friends is something you like to do outside of the work aspect of school and sports. What do you like to do outside of sports and school?
That's about mostly what I do, but I would say what you brought up, being with friends, being with those 6 seniors I built a relationship with, just doing things with them, doing things with my family, that helps me kind of connect off the field and bring what I can bring on the field.
What is your favorite area of school during the day? What's your favorite class or favorite subject area, and what are you looking to do after high school?
My anatomy class, definitely for science. I'm taking kind of a couple of those, and my goal right now, plan to kind of be a physical therapist, looking into that kinesiology. So we'll see where that takes me.
That's great.
Are you hoping to continue your athletic career at the next level?
Yeah, I'm hoping to continue basketball. I'm looking at a lot of colleges right now, going to a lot of camps, so we'll see how this season goes and then hopefully make a decision from there.
What's that process like? It's always interesting when we talk to student athletes who are going through that process where you're trying to make your best decision, both in terms of your athletics, but also in terms of your academics and perhaps laying a foundation for the rest of your life. How much time do you think about that? How much work goes into that? What is the experience like for you?
Yeah, a lot of work has gone into my social media, putting out highlights on huddles, stuff like that. But it is a tough decision, and there's a lot of phones, there's a lot of phone numbers, a lot of DMs, stuff coming your way. So, and it's hard because you got to focus on the sport you're playing now, but you also want to be focused on what you're going to do after. So what I do is I just try and take every opportunity I can right now in the sports I can, and then see what coaches offer and see where I can go from there.
What do you guys do? And I'm sure it's a combination of Coach Gress, Coach Micklig, and other coaches. What do you guys do in I know there's really no off season when you play 3 sports, and I know there's a lot of crossover, both of your teammates and your coaches, but what do you guys do to become better leaders? Like not working on X's and O's, not talking weight room, not running routes. What do your coaches emphasize, or what opportunities do they take to make you guys better young men?
Yeah, we do a lot of community work. So sometimes that's getting out of school, getting out of class, or waking up early. We helped with a marathon here in Wausau, picking up those tables. We helped at St. Vincent de Paul the other day on the day against Wild Rose. So Coach looks for opportunities to get us out in the community, make an impact, and then help bring that leadership to the younger kids and the school to put a good look on for a Newman Catholic.
You obviously have different opponents, different seasons. Do you have a school that when you face in any of these sports that you have a favorite that gets you going, the most favorite opponent?
I mean, probably the game that we're going to play this week against Allman. I mean, they don't like us a whole lot over there, so it's fun to go over there. But it's a lot of the conference games in basketball, just that whole Merriwood Conference, Assumption, that's always fun. Mm-hmm. Those get you riled up before the game.
I guess we should talk about Allman because that is always a significant game It's been a significant game for years. I remember back in 11 players that Newman went down there to play in a playoff game. It just seems like somehow these football programs kind of come together one way or the other. They come off a loss, and that probably is not the best thing in the world. That's a program that's had some success in recent years. When you lose a game, you redouble your efforts. I imagine that's a bigger challenge going into this week, especially going on the road.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they all bring. We're excited. Our goal is to get in there, take care of business, get out as soon as we can. But yeah, we'll see what they have.
What have you seen in preparation? I guess, as a quarterback, you take a close look at their defense. Anything jump out that, hey, maybe this is an area that we can work with without giving away too much of your secrets?
Yeah, they like to keep a lot of people in the box, so we're looking to do some other things with different formations this week and just see if we can open up the outsides, open up the middle.
Chad talked a little bit about rivalries and specific teams, and some of them are probably more friendly rivalries than others. Sounds like this one might be less friendly, but that's I love that part of it too. Do you know a lot of the kids, like, from the other teams you play? Like, obviously football's a very different conference than the Marewood. Like, when you go up in the Marewood, do you know a lot of guys? And like, have you gone to camps together? Are you friends on social media? Or are you kind of all business and don't really care about who plays for the other teams as far as individuals go?
Yeah, I know a lot of the kids on the other schools. Assumption, I know JT, I'm close with him. In football, I know Emmett Stiles, that Dernbach kid. So I know most of the kids on both the schools on social media, stuff like that.
After 2 weeks of the football season, are you more confident about the potential for success for your team than you were at the start of the year?
Yeah, I think that going into the year, we had a little bit of doubt, obviously, size-wise. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're one of the smallest teams in the state for football, and I think our work ethic, our chemistry is going to clash together, and we'll see how far we can take it this year.
Do you feel, like you mentioned earlier, during the summer basketball, there's some alumni come in? I see your alumni all over the place, those guys who went on that great run, right? I see them. What is it like to be a senior now and wear the Newman Cardinal jersey and colors and know what those previous groups have accomplished? There's been a ton of success. You guys have experienced a bunch of success. Hopefully going to continue that tradition this year, wherever you guys end up at the end of the year. What's it like to just, like, being at a smaller school? There's not as many names, like you said before. So how important is it, and what's it like to have your name as one of the guys this year for Newman Catholic?
Yeah, it's super cool. When I was a freshman, though, that Connor, my brother Jackson, Mason, all those guys were seniors, and I was looking up to them like, oh, I just wish I could be in their spot. Like, and now that I'm finally a senior, being the guy, I'm super grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really happy that we can all be out there together.
Did seeing your brother go through it help you in your journey to get to this point?
Yeah, if it weren't for Jackson, I would not be anywhere near where I am. We played tackle football, basketball. He's toughened me up and always wants me to be at my best, and he's super happy for me. Maybe he gets a little upset with me, but it's all for the best.
What are you hoping to accomplish in your senior year? Because it goes by so quickly. And we're just basically starting the senior year, and you have so much still left on your plate. Have you thought about the things that you really want to savor over the next 9 months?
Yeah, just the memories with my teammates, memories with my coaches in the games, just trying to take every chance I get to take it all in, every single Friday night, every single practice, just working as hard as possible.
Anything else, Coach?
Well, I know Chad's got one more for you, and I'd like to let him ask that one. But I just want to say congratulations to a great start. It is awesome seeing you out there healthy, doing your thing, and really can't wait to see how you guys do this week and the rest of the season. So best of luck.
Thank you.
And you know the drill. Our final question involves, especially for seniors who are multi-sport seniors, it really fits what we try to accomplish with the final question. But based on your experiences, and you've had the ups and the downs in terms of health and everything else, based on what you've learned, if you could give a freshman just starting their journey at Newman Catholic involved in athletics, what piece of advice would you give that freshman?
I would just say take every chance you get to work as hard as possible, because you don't know when your season's going to come to an end. Obviously, that was last year. You don't know when something's going to happen. So every shot you have, just attempt it with your best effort.
Fantastic. Congratulations on the terrific start. Best of luck on getting in and out of Almond successfully on Friday night. And best of luck for the next, as I said, about 9 months as you go through the final tour at the Newman Catholic. And best of luck in your decisions in terms of your next level as well. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Again,
Quincy Fender joining us here as our student-athlete guest on the Big High School Sports Show. Hey, we're going to turn our attention to week number 3, and hard to believe, we're going to be heading towards the third pole of the regular season, and we'll talk about the matchups coming up this week. A lot more Friday games, not as many Thursday games around the state of Wisconsin.
I'm good with that.
We'll talk about that coming up next here on 98.9 WXCO.
Are you passionate about local high school sports? So are we. WXCO 98.9 FM is proud to be the only station in Wausau bringing you live, play-by-play coverage of high school sports, game after game, season after season. But we can't do it alone. We are currently seeking local sponsors and community partners who believe in the power of sports to bring people together, inspire youth, and energize our hometown pride. Promote your business, support our local athletes, be heard by thousands of loyal local listeners. If your business is interested in supporting live sports broadcasts while gaining valuable exposure, now is the perfect time to become a WXCO sports sponsor. Message us on our Facebook page or call or text our sales rep, Aaliyah, at 608-573-1597. That's 608-573-1597. Let's keep Wausau High School sports on the air together.
And welcome back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Online at WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, and at YouTube.com on the 98.9 WXCO page at YouTube.com. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, you can get them as a podcast by going to WXCO.FM, hit on the shows page. That will take you a link to all the Civic Media programs, and just find the Big High School Sports Show, and you'll be able to listen to this show and then previous shows as well, and going back to last season if you want to go back and listen to some of those shows again. And also, we have podcasts up on Spotify and the other podcast sites. Just search out Big High School Sports Show or WXCO Sports as well. But Big High School Sports Show, WXCO Sports for our previous high school sports broadcasts, you can relive as well. So a lot to go back and tune into. If you want to just make sure that what Jason Foster and I say is correct, that's always a way to go back and check that out as well.
If we were not correct, you can keep that to yourself, too.
Exactly right. We will not give the email or anything like that. But again, both guests were really good tonight. And we say that all the time, but I think tonight, boy, both guests gave us a lot of good information that I think that's one of the things we want to try to do here. Is we want to find some of the information you may not get somewhere else, so that you can't get by just Googling or looking at the stats of last week's game. And I think for both Dewey Reilly over at Tomahawk, with the way that he's built that program, both on the ice and now on the gridiron, and talking to Quincy Fender about what's going on at Newman Catholic as well, you find out just, I think, a little bit more what's happening closer to where it is happening.
Yeah, and I love the part of it, too, that is we talk to people from different size schools and different conferences who do things differently, right? Like how you do things at a school with 2,200 at Spash versus how you do things with a school of just over 100 at Newman Catholic are completely different and have different levels of success, or similar levels of success, just doing it differently. I thought Coach Reilly did a great job of kind of giving us some really good looks as to how he runs their program, what the expectations are across seasons, and then, I mean, it doesn't really get any better than what Quincy Fender gave us tonight with a great young man and leader.
One of the interesting things that Coach Reilly said, I want to kind of get to your opinion on, is that when we often ask about the next game, like we brought up Wausau East here tonight, And it's like he was, and I heard this during hockey season as well. I mentioned to you, I was for the state hockey tournament. I was driving down for the Wausau West game, and earlier in that day, Tomahawk was playing, and I was listening to the Tomahawk broadcast, and they had an interview with Coach Reilly, and it was not about the opponent. It's all about what we do, what we need to do to be successful. And as a coach, I know that that's not something we always hear. And I think it's because they know that we want to hear some of the thoughts that they have, because that's why you look at the films. You want to know what's going on with the other teams. But just the way he said it, there was no doubt. Yeah. He truly believes we do what we do, we're going to be successful.
Yeah, I think he touched on, I forget what other topic we were talking about, and he said it sounds cliche, but I think the way he said it and what he talked about was legitimate. This is how we do it. I don't care how you ask the question. I don't care what season we're talking about or who our opponent is. This is how we do it, and it appears very much so that his team, and I also liked what he said, that the community has bought into what they're doing, because this isn't just about winning football games and hockey games. This is about creating strong, positive, confident young men and young women in the other sports. And it sounds like that's a big part of what they're doing there. And again, kind of like what we know Coach Micklig, Coach Gress do at Newman Catholic. You could see that in talking to Quincy, that's an important part of what they do. And I think that's ultimately, he mentioned too something along the lines of about winning and losing, and winning isn't everything or whatever. One of the best ways I've heard that kind of proposed or put is the goal is to win. We're talking high school athletics. We're talking varsity high school athletics. The goal is to win. There's too much time, energy, and effort put into it. If you're not willing to say your goal is to win, then I'm not sure what you're doing, because that ultimately is the goal. The purpose of high school athletics is to develop good young men and good women, good young people who, when they're done, are able to look back over their shoulder and say, I'm better today than I was when I started, and I'm ready to take that next step into the real world, whatever it is, college, continued athletics, the workforce, the military, whatever it might be. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is your goal is to win. Our purpose is to develop people. And I would say both programs we kind of spotlighted or talked about tonight are really doing good things in that area.
Absolutely. Well, not as many games to talk about this week, because the conference season truly gets underway, because you don't have 7 Wisconsin Valley Conference schools taking on 7 non-conference opponents. Right. We're now into the conference campaign, and it's not just the Valley, but other conferences as well, and that makes for a very interesting time of the year. In a sense, it's almost a second opening night in a sense.
Yeah, it really is. I think after watching the opening weekend of football, college football last weekend, and how many lopsided wins and blowouts and these whatever.
Bill Belichick.
I'm ready. I'm ready for conference football. I'm ready to watch historic matchups and rivalry games, and starting to really figure out what these teams are made of, and what that top to bottom order is going to start to look like. So I'm excited about week 3.
Let's talk Wisconsin Valley Conference. Let's talk about a game that I will be at. I'm assuming you'll be there as well. Tom Field on Friday, Wausau West against Eau Claire North, 6:35 p.m. airtime right here on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Wausau West 1-1. They gave a battle against Hudson last week, but came up short. It's been a tough start for Eau Claire North, but you look at this matchup, it feels like for Wausau West, you kind of have to get it, right?
I mean, for sure.
Especially with a road trip to Everest coming up next week.
Yeah, you definitely want to have a good showing in this game. I think when you go, if you went position by position, you could certainly make the argument that Eau Claire North maybe matches up better in certain positions. They do not appear through 2 weeks to have been able to put that together for a lot of success. But Wausau West, this is an important game for them to prepare going into. You certainly don't look past Eau Claire North, and Eau Claire North can definitely put up a good challenge in this game.
And I imagine that based on, again, the struggles that North has had on the defensive side and the struggles West had running the football last week, they want to get back to that run game. They did it well against Superior in week number 1 for Wausau West. You can't put your quarterback in a situation to take the kind of hits that he did last week.
Right, and you go back to talking about that first drive last week, and being behind the sticks and converting so many third downs, and you felt really good about it when they scored that touchdown. But the reality of that drive was it wasn't Wausau West football, right? You got to establish the run. You got to make them honor that. And then you take your shots. You send your tight end down. You run some play action and do those sorts of things. And that is not what they do. So I think you're right. I think they're going to look back to getting to running the football this week. And I'm also very interested to see Eau Claire North has some athletes, right? Mm-hmm. Some bigger guys up front. Moved their really good receiver from last year to quarterback. Still have a good receiver and have 2 good running backs. So I'm interested to see the Warrior defense. They played a pretty good game last week against Hudson. One of the questions we maybe had coming out of Superior was the back end, right? Hudson ran the football well against us. Not much success passing, but I think West is still trying to figure out what the back end of that defense looks like, and this might be a good opportunity to shed some light on that.
DC Everest at Wisconsin Rapids, and for the Evergreens, you come off what happened last year. There's that expectations. Unfortunately, expectations don't take into account changes and everything else when it comes to high school athletics. But for DC Everest, it's got to be a point where they got to feel like they got to get feeling a little better about things after a rough go of it. It's tough. You talked about looking at a film like that River Falls game, and it really stings when it's at home as well. Yep. So I imagine they're ready to get back out there. And Wisconsin Rapids, we said it before, they made a step from week 1 to week 2, and Mike Krenz, I'm sure, wants to see his team make another step from week 2 to week 3.
Yeah, I mean, historically you go back, this is one heck of a matchup. Oh. These were for conference championships back in the day. I would say, as we like to, on paper, Everest definitely is probably the better football team, just from a depth, numbers, talent, that sort of thing. But Rapids is definitely going to see some things on film from that River Falls game that they think that they're going to try to expose the way that River Falls did running the football. And Rapids is a goofy place to play football. Like I think there's some bodies buried underneath that field or something, because some of the best teams we had at West, both as head coach and assistant, where you felt like we were going to go in and rock them, and the games were really challenging, and even got stung a couple times over there. So a lot of things would have to go right for Rapids, but I don't think it's out of the question if they're able to kind of expose some of the things maybe that River Falls did last week.
Marshfield at Rice Lake, and boy, Marshfield, it doesn't slow down.
I can tell you what, Marshfield is really looking forward to next year when the conference crossovers change a little bit, because they definitely get the meat grinder weeks 1 through 3 the last 2 years.
And but Marshfield has to feel like, hey, Wisconsin Rapids did some things against Rice Lake last week that maybe they can try to take advantage of, and Marshfield did as well. There was a better performance against Menominee last week.
For sure.
But they got to find a pass game somewhere.
They gotta find some offensive. They gotta possess the ball, and they gotta get first downs. They gotta score points. 16 in the first half, nothing in the second half last week. But we'll probably and broken record here, right? We won't be talking about Rice Lake a ton more after this, but you got to find a way to stop Rice Lake. That's I think Coach Reilly kind of said it. This is a one-up. This is they play a different defense Rice Lake plays a different offense than you're going to see the rest of the year. So you have to prepare differently when you play Rice Lake, kind of like you used to have to prepare differently when you played Rapids.
Yep.
This is that, and they're loaded, right? So the biggest thing when you play Rice Lake is you got to be able to slow them down. You got to make them work for it. You got to hope for a turnover or two, because if they just turn that machine on and possess the ball, it makes for a long night.
Stevens Point at Eau Claire Memorial. One thing I want to mention to you is, have you noticed this year both North and Memorial have on-campus football fields?
They do, and I'm jealous. They both, they're in a very similar situation to Wausau, so getting off topic a little bit here.
Right.
But we added turf to both the schools in Wausau, but we just added the turf. We weren't able to kind of finalize, and the bleachers, the concession stands, bathrooms, all those things that would allow you to play your home varsity football games there. And the Eau Claire schools did it right. They're different. Right? I don't know if you've noticed, Eau Claire North has seating on both sides. So seating on the one side is very nice, portable seating. And the schematics of Memorial did not allow for seating on the other side. But, yeah, both their facilities look very nice. And how great for them to be able to play those home football games. Certainly a goal of both Wausau East and Wausau West to be able to get to that point.
And Stevens Point, kind of the opposite of Marshfield. Again, their schedule has allowed them to kind of roll into it nicely.
Yes, ease into it. And And I truly believe we talked a little bit about maybe Everest struggles tight, and Everest is a good football team, and they're going to end right at the top
exactly.
in the mix for the conference championship. But I think if you again look at rosters, I think when you look at the names that Spash returns versus the other teams in the conference, they have their guys back. I think they more reloaded a supporting cast, but still have some of those big names on that squad. So this is probably another good week for the Panthers. And then it'll be interesting when they start to see some of the other teams in the conference.
Great Northern Conference, and Friday, this is a really intriguing game. Wausau East and Tomahawk. I mean, I saw Wausau East in their opener against Westby. I liked a lot of what I saw. I think they took a step forward compared, as you said, to last year. In that game against Logan, they were pretty much run off the field a year ago on the road. Last week, they had a chance to win it in the fourth quarter, and we talked a lot about Tomahawk. And when you hear Coach Reilly talk, you have no doubt that he's going to have that team in a mental frame of mind that they're going to be able to go out there and battle the Jacks.
And if you take away what's happened so far this year, so taking away nothing from what Wausau East has already accomplished and what Tomahawk has accomplished, if you look at this matchup just from strictly enrollments, right, you would say that Wausau East has obviously a clear advantage just because of their size. I feel like these are the games that Wausau East struggled a little bit in last year, in losing to Rhinelander and almost having the tough one against Merrill when Merrill wasn't playing their best football. So whatever. Certainly I hate the word trap game or stuff like that, but I do think Tomahawk's playing really good football. So is East. It's at Tomahawk. I mean, Coach Reilly also pointed out the fact that there seems to be a lot of parity in the conference this week, so some of those things, home field advantage, may play a big role in the outcome of these matchups.
And I think for Wausau East, one of the things they have going for them is the ability to both run and pass the ball. That's one thing that kind of jumped out. They passed the ball exceptionally well in the first half against Westby. They ran the ball exceptionally well in the second half. And even last week, the numbers were decent throwing the football. And they got two really dangerous receivers. I mean, we even talk about Meverton in the stats earlier, and he's, I think, as dangerous as anybody. Ian Stahl is a kid that can run the ball and run it quite a bit. I think that aspect helps Wausau East.
We talk about how do you game plan for this team or that, or what's your game plan. Wausau East, I think, over the course of last season and 2 weeks into this season has proven that a big part of their offense is big plays, right? Yeah. When you talk about scheming, watching film, doing that, it's hard to put that as a bullet point on your scouting report is we need to, I mean, you can say it, we need to stop the big plays, but there isn't a great recipe for stopping big plays. They usually happen as a result of a breakdown on the defensive side of the football or a mistake in alignment or whatever the case may be. So if your big plays aren't hitting, that makes for a challenging night. But if you just throughout the course of running your offense have the ability to connect on those big plays, that's tough to stop. So I think that's a big part of what they do and probably a difference maker one way or the other Friday night.
And I think that Meverton is helping Moz make a lot of big plays. He had two long touchdown passes against Westby, and they had two more touchdown receptions last week. And I think at some point that pendulum may change where they say, oh, we got to keep a close eye on this kid who has 4 touchdown receptions, and then a kid like Meverton who's a really good athlete. I just think that, and then, of course, if they decide they're going to slow down that pass game, that run game, I just think that I like the balance that I saw from Wausau East.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of like the what we're hearing about Micah Parsons now, right? Like, who's going to benefit the most from Micah Parsons? It's the other side of the defense, right? Because Micah Parsons is going to get all that attention, and those other people have the opportunity to shine.
Merrill and Mosinee. Merrill comes in feeling better after a great second half comeback against Crandon, but Mosinee still a handful, especially at home. I think that's going to be a real challenge for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I mean, in talking with Coach Stoffel last week and hearing what he has to say about their team and their program, they're good. They're a good team this year. Certainly, I think the road for the conference championship goes through Mosinee. Merrill, I think, played their best half of football in the second half of week 2, but that is a tall challenge when you look at kind of the last year. Everybody had to go through Medford in order to compete. I think Mosinee is kind of the front runner in a tough night. a tough challenge for Merrill coming ahead.
And I think if Merrill has a chance, Keelan Allen will have to have another massive game. Again, he's proven to be a big play guy for Merrill. They're going to need, I don't think they're going to be able to grind it out against Mosinee.
No, they're going to need a complete game. They're not going to be able to win it in half of football.
Lakeland at Rhinelander. And Lakeland 2-0, off to a really good start. Rhinelander bounced back from, I would call it, disappointing week 1 loss with a 32-20 win last week. Lakeland, these kind of games always feel like Rhinelander's going to come up and bite them. I don't know why. It's just Rhinelander traditionally has been, since they've gone to the GNC, a pretty solid program. But this Lakeland team, are they ready to take a step forward?
Yeah, I definitely got a bias working here because Lakeland is the team I've seen in person this year at the scrimmage, and they had a lot of nice pieces, and for them to have turned that into a 2-0 start, I think that certainly has given them some confidence playing at Rhinelander. And I think Rhinelanders, we keep waiting for Rhinelander to maybe take a step, maybe not even the next step, but like to be in that mix. Are we in the middle and competing to be in the top third, or are we in the bottom half looking to get to the middle? Right. So I think this game will kind of tell us a lot about these two teams and where they're at.
Medford at Antigo, and of course, Medford's results have not been good the first 2 weeks. Antigo had a big win last week, but it feels though this is going to be one to find out just how steep is the climb for Medford. How much did they lose? How much youth are they going to have to develop? Because we're not used to seeing Medford have the results that we saw the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and in Antigo's defense, just going to throw this out there, Pines is 2-0. They went and beat Adams Friendship last week, so maybe
I'm glad you were keeping an eye on that.
So maybe we don't know where Antigo is. I would say, with all things being equal, you go with the team that has demonstrated the better program. And I think against schools like Onalaska and Holman, young squads, no matter what your program is, are hard to win with. I think getting back into this conference play and a team with Antigo who has consistently struggled in recent years, I think Medford probably looks at this as a get right game and their climb back into a playoff run.
That said, I think of all the places to start their conference, that might be one of the harder ones because for younger players going into Schofield Stadium, that's a different environment.
Yeah.
It just is. It's just a different feel when you go into that stadium, isn't it?
Absolutely. I remember playing there in high school, and it is different. There's a ton of tradition there. Antigo is coming off a nice win, so that'll be interesting.
CWC Large, and another conference that I think is going to be exceptionally interesting. And you have the 0-2 Stratford Tigers home against Spencer Columbus and their record-setting running back. Yeah. And that's a rivalry game. Of course, you got Columbus, who's in Marshfield, and Spencer is right there as well, right next to Stratford, which is very close by, within about 10, 15 miles of each other. But traditionally, this has been a tough matchup for Spencer Columbus. But boy, I mean, again, you're not used to seeing Stratford at 0-2, and their pass game just has not been good.
Yep, and I would bet that Spencer Columbus is gonna probably find out that Stratford is not happy about being 0-2 and looking to get back to their winning ways.
Wyowega Fremont at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, and Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, of course, had that good win against Bondwell in Week 1. Saw a lead slip away at Tomahawk last week. But I still, when you bring in, go back, you heard Coach Reilly talk about the knee injury with the quarterback that has really, I think, turned this Whitburn team a little bit on their head. I still would have a little concern if I'm the Chargers against the Wyowega Fremont team that is, I think, knocking on the door of trying to become, instead of maybe the 4th or 5th place team in that conference, maybe a top 3 team in that conference.
Yeah, I think definitely more so than the last few years. There does seem to be, at the top anyway, those top 4, there seems to be maybe a little bit more balance, or maybe optimism's the right word.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say about this matchup, going back to the Whitburn Tomahawk game from last week, conference play is different than non-conference play. You always prepare, you put a ton of time in and effort, but preparing for a non-conference game with somebody you maybe see once a year, maybe if you don't have a 2-year agreement, maybe it's first time, maybe it's last time you play them in a long time. But now you're back to those rivalry games and those foes. and you pull out last year's game plan and you pull up last year's stats and you look at the returners and all of those things. So I think that there's definitely a psychological piece that goes into this game. But we liked what Waiwega Fremont did much of the season last year. They just couldn't get over the hump with the big three. So this is their first shot this year at getting over that hump.
These are all interesting games. I mean, you got Loyal Greenwood at Marathon. Now, Loyal Greenwood, the first 2 weeks have been, I think, a surprise team.
World beaters.
I mean, they've come out and they have started 2-0 and very impressively 2-0. And Marathon was a missed field goal, a blocked field goal away from being 2-0 and getting a really good win against Auburndale last week after starting off with a terrific win against Pittsville. I saw the Loyal Greenwood in Marathon last season, and Marathon was pretty dominant in that football game. But again, one of these teams is going to come out of this game feeling really like, hey, we got something going here.
Yeah, I think for Marathon, it's great that this game is at home.
Yeah.
Kind of that same thing. New coach, tough loss, but a competitive game last week, and a Loyal Greenwood team that's coming in with some confidence. So at the end of the day, it should be a really good game. I feel like with the pieces that Marathon has, this will tell us a lot about where they are.
Amherst at Colby. Amherst has been rock solid the first 2 weeks, fairly easy wins, not against teams that jumped off the page. Colby had a really good week 1 win against Stanley Boyd, but Stanley Boyd, I think, lost last week significantly as well, so it looks like maybe they're a team that's struggling a little bit early. But Colby traditionally has run the football well in Colby. It's still a tough matchup, but I think we're going to find out a little bit more about Amherst in this game.
Yeah, I think is knowing about Stratford's tough non-conference start. We'll see what it looks like in conference starting this week. But is this Amherst's opportunity to say, after a 3-year hiatus, we're back to being on top of this? And I think this game will go. I mean, I think that Amherst is definitely favored in this game. The final score and the outcome of it might tell us a little bit more about how the top of this conference shakes out.
Merriwood CWC, and it's a shame in a sense that probably the game of the year is in the first conference week of the year, as you got Auburndale at Edgar. Then again, it may not be the game of the year because I think Auburndale showed I don't think they got 200 yards last week in their game against Marathon. They're going to have to find some offense, and it's going to be hard against an Edgar defense that was so stout against Stratford last week.
Yeah, that's. I think it's a tough matchup, and I think when you talk about Edgar, that's what we talk about. When they are elite, it's because they have an elite defense. And if Marathon held them to 200, I would say Edgar probably found an extra 100 yards they'd like to pair off of that. So, but I think it's important in a game like this, being one of Edgar's toughest conference matchups this year. It'll be interesting to see what their offense does against it, because Marathon didn't completely run ruckshot offense on them either. They had 250, I think, or something, 243 or whatever it was. Yeah, so I think that it'll be interesting to see what Edgar does offensively in this game.
And if my memory serves me right, and as I get older, that's often not the case, I think Auburndale actually won in Edgar the last time they went there 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to have to double-check that when you're talking next just to make sure. But, again, it's whenever you win in Edgar, that's a big, big accomplishment.
You put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah. Abbotsford at Iola Scandinavia. And again, these are basically these two first games are the teams that are expected to be among the top 4 in the conference.
Right.
That's the way it's been the last couple of years. And Abbotsford, again, a really good win against Colby last week. And Iola Scandinavia is always a team that's going to be right near the top of this league.
Yeah, it's crazy to think the impact of these 2 games this week. I mean, there's going to be a clear-cut front runner for second place in this conference after week 1 of conference play. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Abbotsford, we didn't feel like was Abbotsford week 1, and last week they kind of got back to their rushing ways. So it'll be interesting to see how this one matches up.
And I was wrong. Auburndale did lose at Edgar 41-0 2 years ago. So,
so didn't quite.
My
win.
memory has big holes in it, apparently.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Jerry, if you're listening, we apologize.
And I want to make sure I get the correct information out there because they're saying I'm sure somebody said I was at that game. It's 41-0 Edgar.
What is that guy talking about?
What's he talking about? Assumption and Pacelli. For these schools, again, when you have to face such tough competition with the rest of the conference, there's an added importance to this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is kind of they're playing for 5th and 6th place probably in this game, and Pacelli's last year in the conference, correct? Or is it Assumption?
Assumption. Yep.
Assumption's last year.
Yep.
I apologize, Pacelli. Yep. Yeah, Assumption's last year in the conference. So this is kind of this last run through for them. So obviously looking to be great for them to get a win. Obviously longtime rivals Assumption and Pacelli. So this should be a competitive game.
And Pittsville gets a forfeit against Rosholt as Rosholt has moved to the 8-player game this year. And the interesting aspect is that Pittsville did not get a game. How do you look at that? That's not good. The season's short enough as it is. I hate for the athletes not to be able to have an opportunity.
I do. I hate it. I would say as now a former athletic director, I don't know the circumstances.
Right. I'm not saying that,
it's quite possible. They couldn't find a game because everybody plays this week.
I'm sure that's the case.
But it is horrible for the kids.
Right.
I mean, when you look at a football season, you are guaranteed 9 games. There's nothing else like that in high school athletics.
Yeah, the only way you get a game is if somebody else is forfeited because now it's all conference. I mean, there's no teams hanging out there. So it's like I'm not saying that they wanted it this way, but it still stinks for everybody.
It's over 10% of your season. So football is really a 365-day a year. And I mean, you play other sports, but you're always preparing through lifting and competing to play football. You get 9 games, so to lose one of them right off the bat, that is a tough one.
And on the 8-player side, a game that we will have live on the Sports 2 stream of WXCO.FM and the Civic Media app Friday night at 6:35, and on tape delay after the Wausau West game on 98.9 WXCO. Newman Catholic against Alman Bancroft, and Quincy was not telling any untruths. That is a bit of a rivalry game. It's not a friendly rivalry game. I know that.
Is this the one that ended early?
Yeah.
Last year. Yeah. So
I'm
sure there's a lot on both sides, and I'm not gonna rip any scabs off any wounds here, but I know there was some bad blood as a result of the way that one ended. So yeah, what a great opportunity. Should be a really good football game.
I think it will be
teams that don't like each other. I really like that. I think that definitely adds to your preparation. I think that one of the best things about high school athletics is the emotional component and learning how to play within those emotions, but also get excited and celebrate. And I think this game brings all of that together. So that should be a good one.
And some road trips are just more difficult. And going into a place like Alman Bancroft has never been easy for Newman Catholic. And again, it's just one of those, I think, fun kind of games because, I mean, that's competition.
Yeah, I would, based on some of the things you've said and what Quincy said tonight, I would imagine the Alman Bancroft fans will welcome the Newman Catholic Cardinals into the stadium that night as well.
Well, we got a little bit more than a minute to go as you take a look at what's happening this coming week. Are there any particular games that kind of jump out at you in terms of, hey, this is going to be one that's going to keep a really tight eye on that will say something to me as we get to week 3 already of the season?
I think my first statement would be, to some extent, all of them, because after this week, we'll kind of the picture starts to kind of present itself.
Wins.
I think maybe if I were looking for an entire conference, I think it might be the GNC. I think I'm interested. I think like Coach Reilly said, there's potentially a lot of parity there, and so these week 1 matchups have more importance. And I'm kind of looking forward to looking at the scores Friday night and saying, all right.
And then I will figure out who's going to join us next week.
Yes.
It's always one of the fun aspects is look at all those results and say who should we invite next week. And
it's interesting. My wife asked me a couple days ago who, and I did not know yet who we had decided on. But as I kind of went through the Rolodex in my head of the scores from last week, I'm like, well, we're probably not going there, probably not going there, probably not going there. So give us lots of opportunities.
We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chad. Good luck, everybody.